The little boy didn't notice his mother wasn't eating. He smiled as he finished the last bite of stew, then looked up with innocent eyes. "Mom, aren't you hungry?" She forced a smile and gently shook her head. "No, sweetheart. Watching you eat is enough for me." Across the cafe, a lonely rancher quietly lowered his spoon. He looked at the woman's empty plate. Then he noticed something no one else had. When the waitress brought the bill, the woman secretly counted a few worn coins in her trembling hand, then quietly pushed her own plate away because she didn't have enough money for another meal. The rancher didn't speak. He simply stood up, but what he did next would change not only that mother's life. It would uncover a forgotten talent that would rescue his struggling ranch in a way no one could have imagined. Stay until the end, because this isn't just a story about hunger. It's about how one unnoticed sacrifice became the beginning of an extraordinary future. And if stories of kindness, hope, and unforgettable Wild West journeys inspire you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. The autumn wind swept through the frontier town of Dry Creek, carrying the smell of fresh bread and wood smoke from Maggie's Cafe, the busiest little restaurant for miles. Ranch hands crowded the wooden tables after a long day on horseback, laughing over bowls of stew while lanterns flickered warmly against the log walls. Among the noise and conversation, one quiet corner held a very different story. A young woman named Clara sat beside her 8-year-old son, Ben. Her blue dress had been carefully patched several times, and her faded shawl could no longer keep out the cold. The journey west had taken nearly everything she owned after her husband died from a fever the previous winter. She had come hoping to find honest work, but every ranch she visited already had enough hands or turned away a widow with a child. Ben's stomach growled loudly, making him blush with embarrassment. Clara smiled as though nothing was wrong and gently stroked his hair. When the waitress arrived, Clara emptied every coin from her small cloth purse onto the table. She counted them twice before quietly saying, "1 bowl of beef stew and 1 piece of bread, please." The waitress hesitated, understanding more than Clara wished to reveal, but nodded kindly and disappeared into the kitchen. When the steaming bowl arrived, Clara carefully broke the bread into small pieces and placed them into Ben's bowl so it would seem like a larger meal. "Eat slowly," she whispered with a smile. "The cook made extra good stew today." Ben happily obeyed, too hungry to notice his mother's empty plate. After several bites, he looked up. "Mom, aren't you eating?" Clara forced another smile, though her stomach twisted painfully. "I'm not hungry, sweetheart. You need it more than I do." Ben accepted her answer because children often believe the people they love most. Across the room, however, someone had been quietly watching. Jacob Turner, a respected rancher known more for his silence than his words, sat alone finishing supper after delivering cattle to town. Since losing his wife years earlier, he had learned to notice things other people overlooked. He noticed Clara never once lifted a spoon. He noticed how carefully she watched every bite Ben ate, almost as though seeing him full somehow eased her own hunger. Then he noticed the few lonely coins left on the table, not enough to buy another meal. Jacob looked away for a moment, remembering another winter many years before. His own mother had often claimed she had already eaten, only for him to discover later she had secretly gone hungry so he could have enough. That memory had never left him. Without saying a word, Jacob quietly called the cafe owner aside. "Bring the lady another meal," he said softly. "Tell her the kitchen made too much by mistake." The owner smiled knowingly but shook his head. "I've tried helping folks that way before. Pride is sometimes hungrier than the stomach." Jacob thought for a long moment before another idea came to him. A few minutes later, the owner walked over carrying a fresh roast chicken, vegetables, warm biscuits, and hot apple pie. He placed everything on Clara's table. "Mom," he announced loudly enough for nearby customers to hear, "congratulations. You're today's 100th guest. The cafe is celebrating 5 years in business, and you've won our special family supper." Clara stared in disbelief. There must be some mistake." The owner laughed warmly. "No mistake at all. Please enjoy it before it gets cold." Tears gathered in Clara's eyes as Ben clapped his hands with excitement. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to eat. Jacob watched quietly from across the room, satisfied that no one would know the truth. But as Clara thanked the cafe owner again and again, something unexpected caught Jacob's attention. Before taking her own first bite, Clara carefully divided every piece of food into neat portions, wrapping half inside a clean cloth from her bag. Curious, Jacob asked the waitress why she wasn't eating it all. The waitress returned a moment later with the answer. She says there are 2 elderly sisters staying at the boarding house who haven't eaten since yesterday. She wants to save some for them. Jacob slowly lowered his coffee cup. Here was a woman who had been starving herself for her child, and even now, after finally receiving enough food, she was thinking about strangers before herself. At that moment, Jacob realized her greatest strength wasn't endurance. It was a heart so generous that hardship had never managed to harden it. And although Clara didn't know it yet, that quiet act of selflessness had just changed the course of both their lives forever. The next morning, Jacob found Clara preparing to leave town before sunrise. She thanked the cafe owner once again, refusing to ask anyone for more help. Jacob stopped beside her wagon and simply asked, "Would you accept honest work instead of charity?" Clara agreed without hesitation. At the ranch, Jacob gave her a small cabin and offered simple jobs: keeping records, helping in the kitchen, and organizing supplies. Within days, Clara noticed the ranch wasn't failing because of drought, but because everything was poorly managed. Food was being wasted, chicken eggs went unsold, and workers often repeated the same tasks. Without being asked, she created schedules, improved storage, started selling butter, eggs, and homemade bread in town, and even planted a vegetable garden that reduced expenses. The ranch slowly began earning more than it had in years. Jacob watched quietly as the woman who once couldn't afford a single meal transformed his struggling ranch through wisdom, hard work, and determination. He realized he hadn't rescued Clara at all. She was becoming the person who would rescue everyone around her. Months later, Jacob's ranch had become one of the most successful in the valley, not because of luck, but because Clara had turned compassion into hard work and opportunity. The little boy who once ate alone now laughed around a table filled with workers who treated him like family. When the cafe owner visited the ranch, Clara quietly handed him a basket of fresh bread, vegetables, and eggs with one request: "Please give these to anyone who says they're not hungry while their child is eating." Jacob smiled, knowing exactly why. Soon after, he asked Clara to stay, not as an employee, but as his partner in life. She accepted, not because she needed someone to save her, but because they had built a future together based on respect, trust, and shared kindness. Moral true generosity doesn't create dependence, it creates opportunity. The greatest gift isn't giving someone a meal for one day, it's believing in them until they can build a better tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us for more unforgettable Wild West stories where kindness changes lives in unexpected ways.